Hello and welcome to Roll for Sanity, where we become mythos investigators to battle evil in tabletop role-playing adventures. Today, we're going to create a character for the Cthulhu Dark Ages, an era setting for the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game 7th edition by Chaosium. If you visit the Roll for Sanity blog, you can read about what the Dark Ages setting is like, and if you listen to the podcast episode, you'll hear why this is a great era in which to play. We even have a guest, Matt from the YouTube channel Spot Hidden, who shares their experience of playing an investigator 500 years before the Necronomicon was written down. Cthulhu Dark Ages is set in anglo-saxon Britain around 950 AD. It's called the Dark Ages as there was a belief that there was very little development during this time period, and most of the population were very isolated and did not have much reason to leave the area in which they lived. Instead, each contributed to the community, taking care of everyone in their own way. We'll be looking at creating a character to fit into this community and also investigate the mythos, so let's roll for sanity and see how our character shapes up.
Personal attributes.
To get our attribute scores, I've used some code called a macro that I've found and used it in Roll20 to give us some instant scores. Here's what we got. A strength of 55 is above average, but not an outstanding attribute. Constitution again is 50, nothing to write home about. Our size, however, comes in at 75. Our investigator is very broad or tall or a little bit of both. And added to the strength, that means there's a damage bonus, very useful in an era of mainly hand-to-hand combat. Dexterity is 45, not good with their hands or movement, but not as bad as others. Appearance comes in at a great 75. Our character is going to be very easy on the eye, and we should keep this in mind when it comes to occupation choice, as people will be drawn to their appearance. Intelligence is 55, so another average score for the character to go along with strength and constitution. Power is quite low, so I wouldn't expect this character to stay sane for very long. If your keeper ever gives you the chance to adjust your power score during a character creation session, take it. This score means that a SAN loss of just 8 points will drive the character indefinitely insane. Education is again average, so when we look at occupations, we'll see if there's another attribute that can help us out and get some more skill points. And finally, luck of 85. This is one lucky person, but as you can't use luck to adjust your SAN rolls, then this amazing score may not save the character. Sanity points are the same as our power, 40 SAN points, so expect our character to fail over half of their sanity rolls. As ever, I'll say this character is 30 years old, so don't incur any penalties of getting old. Let's look at hit points, which is constitution and size, then divide the total by 10, rounding down any fractions. So that's 12 hit points, a good amount for our character, but we'll be adding points to our dodge skill for sure. Next, we'll see if there is a damage bonus by adding our strength and size together, which is over 25, the threshold for a damage bonus. Yes, you gain a build point, which means in some circumstances you are easier to hit in combat, but due to your character's size, you get an extra 1d4 damage, which is always handy. Lastly is move rate, which will be 7 as our character's dex and strength are less than our size. Now this is the Dark Ages, and our character will be afflicted by our environment and pick up a trait, which will help shape their physique and skills. To find our trait, we roll 2d20 and look at the score on pages 60 and 61 of the Cthulhu Dark Ages handbook. I scored 21, so have an imbalance of the humours, choleric. The Dark Ages believed that a healthy person had a good balance of body fluids they called the humours. A malady would be caused by an imbalance, so our character lost some of their hearing, that's minus 10% to their listen skill, but developed better language skills, giving us plus 10% to our persuade skill. So we have the stats for our character with 2 outstanding attributes, size and appearance. This should help us choose our occupation. If the character had a good strength, I'd maybe be looking at a blacksmith, as they would fit in well to the community. But with average strength, I need to look again and see on page 56 of the Cthulhu Dark Ages era handbook the occupation of cleric, which allows appearance to contribute to occupational skill points.
Occupation and skills.
Cleric can choose from the following skills. Charm. This is ideal. The perfect interpersonal skill to go with an appearance of 75%. Library use. A good investigator skill to have, but as this is the Dark Ages, we'll have to spend some points on being able to read and write later on. Persuade. Thanks to my trait of imbalance of the humus choric, I have plus 10% here already. Other language Latin? Well, I prefer not to spend points on other languages, but as this character is a cleric, they should have a grasp on religious texts. The Law of Own Kingdom. This is a new Dark Ages skill to find out information about where you live, so it could give you a lead in the game, such as if you know the mayor of the next town over, or when an important event occurred in your village. Useful, but maybe not essential for a cleric based away from town in a monastery. Read and write Latin. So with Cthulhu Dark Ages, you may be able to speak Latin, but can you read it as well? You may have to weigh your skill points and see how often you think you're going to read Latin versus how often you think you're going to speak it. Religion. As a cleric, we need to be well versed in the scriptures of our faith and the organisation in which we serve. This is a nice extra skill to have, as sometimes this can be used in place of an occult skill roll, and if you have a kind keeper, they may allow you to roll religion to get some kind of bonus in recovering sanity. No harm in asking them. And our last skill can be one other skill as a personal speciality. If we needed some extra skill points, we could skip this one, but I often use this to define my character a bit more. I wouldn't mind this cleric being a bit of a specialist in the occult, which is why they are an investigator. But let's see how our point spend goes. To find out how many occupational skill points we have to spend, we look at page 59 of the Cthulhu Dark Ages Era Handbook. And for the cleric, it is our education score multiplied by 2, and then we add to that our appearance score multiplied by 2, giving us a combined occupational skill points of 230. Let's make our character well off and put 55 into credit rating. This is a good band to be, as you can probably hire some protection when you go out on an adventure. Charm has a base of 15%, so adding 45 points here will take this to 60%, making our cleric a people person. The library use skill in Cthulhu Dark Ages starts at just 5%, so we'll add 25 points here to bring it up to 30%, and we'll see if we can spare some personal interest points to take that a little higher. Persuade, due to the bonus I got from my train, I don't think I need to spend any points here, as I have charm and good looks. Other language Latin. Will the cleric need to speak Latin? With a base of 5%, I can add 15 points here to give them a fighting chance if they do. Own Kingdom Law has a base of 20%, so I can add just another 10% for an okay chance of knowing who is who. Read and write Latin starts at 1%, so we're going to have to spend big here. 30 points added, and hopefully more from personal interest skill points, as I think the cleric is going to be a bit of a researcher. Religion has a good base of 20%, so adding 25 to that brings it up to a respectable 45%. And I do have 25 points left for the occult skill, which starts at a base of 5%, so adding my remaining points to that brings it up to 30% in total.
Personal interest skills.
With 110 points to spend on personal skills, we can bolster up some of our occupational skills and add some staying alive skills, which are essential for any mythos investigator. Let's start with library use and add an extra 10% there, a boost for read and write Latin with an extra 12 points there, a little boost for religion of 5%, and some more for the occult, an extra 10% goes there. My character had lost some hearing due to their trait, so I'll add 10% to the listen skill to offset that. First of our standard investigator skills is dodge, adding 28 points here to the half-deck score of 22% to make it 50% dodge. Next is spot hidden. Always try to bring this up to 50% as well, as keepers use spot hidden an unhealthy amount. Now, I'd say the cleric wouldn't have too much of a reason to have a fighting skill, but with that damage bonus, they ought to get some points in that, so they stand a chance of hitting someone if there is an emergency. So 10 points on fighting brawl.
The finishing touches.
Our cleric is wealthy with a credit rating of 55, and on page 73 of Cthulhu Dark Ages, we can see that the very poor and the very rich get a bonus when they barter for the price of something to buy. Our cleric doesn't have that bonus, but can spend up to 8 pence a day, which is enough to hire a guard for a week. But they will have to save up if they want to buy a hooded robe, as those costs 60 pence, as listed on page 88 of the Cthulhu Dark Ages book. Gear and possessions then will be minimal. That hooded robe and a staff will do for now until we have to prepare for an investigation. For other finishing touches, we'll choose from the Cthulhu Dark Ages table to help us out. When we look at what a cleric is, we find that they are different from a monk or a priest, having come from a wealthy family, receiving tuition in a monastery, and now serves one of the nobility. That's a great hook to give a keeper, as they can say our cleric has been tasked by our noble to investigate the mystery. What else can we add from these tables? Personal description. Well, with a size of 75 and an appearance of 65, the cleric is certainly noticeable in more ways than one. We'll say that they are handsome and friendly. Ideology, we need to give some connection to the church, so we'll say that they are loyal to the church where they were trained and received their education. Significant people, I think we'll have a close friend in the service of the noble who received similar training but went on a different profession path, and they have a shared experience of that training together. As this character comes from a good background, we'll say their meaningful location is their family home where they look forward to visiting when they need to recharge. For the character's treasured possession, I like the look of some kind of holy relic, or at least what they think is a holy relic. We'll say they have a pendant containing one of the teeth of St. Oswald. That sounds fun. Top of the second column, found on the character sheet, we have traits, and I think our character has worked hard to become charming and pleasant to be around. The next 3 boxes on the character sheet are there to receive game information such as lasting physical and mental injuries. With Cthulhu Dark Ages, any major wound you will receive will leave a mark, so get ready to fill this in when you play. A reminder that the last box on your backstory isn't mentioned too much, but for you as a player it's always useful to complete. Has your character encountered any strange things before? I like filling this one in because it gives us a reason for the character to do what they do. Investigate the mythos. We'll say that they were doing their training in the monastery and then they read the wrong book and they've had a vision of the mythos. That sounds good. So with a few dice rolls, some rules from a book and our imagination, we've created an era character for the Cthulhu Dark Ages. We'll call them Leo Frick, who came from a well-to-do family, received some training and now sets forth into the world as a cleric, researching the strange so that the noble they serve can be better prepared for the next solar eclipse. Feel free to visit the blog at www.rollforsanity.com, where you'll find more about the Dark Ages, and on the podcast you'll hear from our guest Matt from the Spot Hidden YouTube channel about why this is such a great era in which to play. Thanks for joining us, and we'll roll for sanity again soon.